thank you very much for inviting me to speak today and to talk to you about establishing a thriving fashion community for global impact. So our mission at the British Fashion Council is to champion British fashion as a creative force on the global stage. And when we think about how we do that, we think about the target state for this thriving fashion community within this ecosystem. And in order for this community to thrive, it means that everybody absolutely has to play their part. And that target state for us includes a pipeline of creative talent, growing businesses at every stage, from startup to developing to established, and of course, different kinds of businesses. In London, we have incredible street style, we've got fantastic designer community, we've got demi-couture, couture designers, and all of those have different business models, some direct to consumer, some wholesale and direct to consumer, made to order, etc. And we also think about sort of not only domestic community, but the international community, and of course, diversity in all of its aspects. Alongside this, we need strong retail, a vibrant creative sector, and I'm not just talking about the creative industries, but actually the surrounding creatives for the fashion industry, the photographers, the stylists, the image makers, the hair, the makeup artists. We need great routes to investment. We need great philanthropy. We need strong support from our governments. And of course, you need a convener of all of this, and that's the role that the British Fashion Council takes. Of course, that target state is the ideal, and we work in this wonderful industry that is always changing, which means we never get to that perfect target state. And, well, it certainly makes the day job interesting for us, and I guess for all of you as well. So in order to help us stay focused, we think about establishing and actually continuing to evolve pioneering world-class programs that help us both unlock and elevate the creative talent that we have in the UK. I think the British Fashion Council is known for developing incredible pathways for young designer support programs, and I believe that New Gen, one of the programs I'm going to talk to you about in a minute, was one of the pioneers, the original. But it's been fantastic to see brilliant support programs for talent developed globally, whether that's the Fashion Funds, the LVMH Prize, Fashion Trust Arabia, and of course, the brilliant designers that we launched last night in the 10 Asian Designers to Watch. And it's really important because this industry is not an easy industry to be in, and these platforms and support are incredibly important. Within the UK, every year we have a pipeline of talent coming through our incredible colleges. So in an inordinate amount of time, the British Fashion Council spend on supporting early stage businesses to make sure that we have the right foundations in these businesses to allow them to grow. And we do that in many ways. So we have a charity, the BFC Foundation, that allows us to really think about supporting talent through grants and mentoring programs that are delivered by my brilliant team, who deploy an army of industry experts and advisors to help mentor these young designers. But equally is that we host seminars delivered by the team to help bring that community together, to think about professional development, and also to think about some of the challenges and opportunities our industry brings. So I'm sharing this slide with you because this year we're celebrating 30 years of our New Gen programme. And we decided to tell this story through an exhibition at the Design Museum in London called Rebel, 30 Years of London Fashion. If you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to see it. It's on until the 11th of February in London. And so-called rebel, because, of course, that embraces the rebellious spirit of young creatives coming through, particularly in London, who are always challenging the norms of our industry. And that's something that we definitely welcome. To give you a bit of background, New Gen started back in 1993. It supported a cohort of young businesses to show their collections at the Ritz Hotel to a group of international buyers that were coming to London. And then amongst that cohort, there was a young designer called Lee Alexander McQueen. And McQueen, of course, were the sponsor of the exhibition. But Lee, at the end of the show, decided to pack up the collection and go to the incredible club in London. Of course, we've got a great club scene there. He didn't have the money to check in the collection to the coat check, and so put it all in rubbish bags and stashed it cleverly outside of the club. And on leaving the club in the early hours of the morning, of course, left the club to find that the rubbish had been collected and the sample collection was never to be seen again. Quite a tragic story, but the exhibition starts to rebuild some of these samples. But actually, is that the point of telling it is just how intertwined the young fashion designers are with our creative scene, the club scene, the music scene, the art scene in London, and the influence that it has on these young designers. So, some other names that you might know that have come through New Gen: Erdem, Roxanda, Simone Rocha, Molly Goddard, the wonderful Chet Lowe, who's part of the 10 Asian Designers to Watch, is part of our New Gen programme. And we've continued to layer on support for young designers since we launched New Gen back in '93. We have fashion funds, we have a fashion trust, and that is really about building this support pathway through from startup, taking businesses from around sort of £50,000 turnover to hopefully several million. Now, the reason why we did sort of the storytelling of this exhibition, of New Gen within an exhibition, was an opportunity to reach consumer audiences, to reach young talent, to educate, and to think about inspiring the next generation of talent into our industry. And our BFC Foundation charity, which provides the grants for New Gen, actually supports 30 young people to access education, no matter what background they're from. And it supports Saturday clubs throughout the UK to help young people have access to fashion and arts education, but maybe they don't within their school programs. And it's very important for us to make sure that we're supporting that pipeline of talent right from the very beginning. Let me think. So, back in 2020, we decided to broaden the support even further that we have for designer businesses. And this was an opportunity really to recognise the designers that had come through New Gen, Fashion Trust and our fashion funds, and really look at helping them to access networks to continue to help them to grow. And this is our membership programme, which I'll touch on a little bit over the next few minutes. And recognising that so many, particularly as they're tackling the challenges of global growth, need the support of the ecosystem and network that I mentioned at the beginning to help them to continue on their path of growth. And so membership was pretty much launched at the beginning of us exiting the EU, that dreadful Brexit word that we don't like to talk about, to think about tackling new trading challenges as the UK enters new global trading arrangements, but equally sort of development in e-commerce, direct-to-consumer models, as well as tackling some of the challenges around sustainability, diversity and inclusion, and thinking about how we're being constantly disrupted by digital innovation, but more of that in a moment. So one of the paths to growth for us is really about amplifying our narrative globally and to develop platforms that help us reach global audiences. London Fashion Week is a key element for that. It's an opportunity for it to get our businesses in front of the international retailers and media and to make a lot of noise. Is that during London Fashion Week is that the retail scene is vibrant and it's like a content-making machine where not only the designers but equally the brands are able to tell their story to global consumers through media, influencers, our channels, the designers' own channels, and of course the army of students that are fighting their way to get into the shows. So it's incredibly important for us to really think about embracing the city and to encourage everybody to play their part in London Fashion Week so that not only the select few within the industry have the opportunity to celebrate British fashion, but equally that the consumers have this opportunity to continue to engage as well. Next year, it's 40 years of London Fashion Week. As you can maybe understand the theme, we love an opportunity to celebrate and talk about the British fashion industry. But very, very important for us that during this 40 years that we go back into international markets to build new relationships, to tell the story of London Fashion Week past, but most importantly, the future, and to reconnect with those brilliant friends that we were unable to see during those awful pandemic years. Now, another global platform that we have is the Fashion Awards. And 1 week today at the Royal, in fact, it will have just finished. I'll probably be leaving one of the after parties at the Royal Albert Hall in London. We host the Fashion Awards really to celebrate incredible talent globally and to put our designers front and center stage alongside the global luxury brands. It's very important for us. It's the main fundraiser for our BFC Foundation charity, which enables us to do all of that brilliant work throughout the year. And our point of view on this is really about celebrating fashion intersection with culture and entertainment and telling that story through a lens of London's influence. Let me share a tiny clip of last year.
You all are at the most exclusive, hottest spot in town.
I love London.
So nice to be back home. It is always exciting and it is always iconic.
I'm going to stop it there because I'm starting to get nervous. We've got 1 week to this big event, 3,000 people, but it will be really exciting. So I look forward to celebrating the winners, and I hope you will too. But these platforms are so important for us in layering into our growth agenda. They create fantastic global exposure for our British businesses, and they make us as the British Fashion Council both convener and marketeer, creating this halo effect for our industry that deliver a network that adds value to the businesses that are our membership. Through these global events, we have fantastic, strong relationships with media, with retailers, with talent internationally, with media and talent around the world, and we're able to leverage that for our members' benefit year-round, whether that's introductions or seminars or opportunity to knowledge share, to get market insights, to really think about helping and supporting our businesses to grow. And that's back to supporting for our membership program that we only started back in 2020. Finally, when we look at the industry and we think about the future, we think about how we can fuel responsible growth, support the community by really looking at it through a lens of innovation. Because if our designers are constantly innovating, we need to really think about the industry in that way too. And so sort of the final strategic pillar to our program is looking at sustainability, diversity and inclusion, and of course, digital innovation. So we've recently partnered with the UK government's R&D department on a 2-year program to look at what a master plan could be for the UK to accelerate to a circular fashion ecosystem. And we can only do this by working in partnership with large businesses and, of course, the independent innovators that we have in our industry. It is a big ask and a big mission, but one that I genuinely believe needs to be done in order for our industry to have a strong future. And we're doing this through 6 pillars. The first, we're up and running already, so recycling infrastructure, sustainable manufacturing, circular business models. And the 3 will kick off in the new year are around new skills, novel technologies, and green growth. And this is about looking at global best practice. It's about knowledge sharing. It's about existing research and commissioning new research with real-time data from the working group to test and learn around what is possible at this moment in time. So if anyone wants to get involved with a knowledge share, please come and contact me because this is an opportunity for us to collaborate moving forward. From a diversity and inclusion perspective, this is now integral to the strategy of most of our businesses and to the British Fashion Council. And actually, just last night, I was reading the first data we've got back from a D&I census that we've done to really help collect data on the diversity of the workforce in the fashion industry in the UK that our industry members are able to collect themselves. Really interesting. We'll be talking about it in January because now we need to work with McKinsey to look at what best practice looks like, recommendations, and the role for the British Fashion Council in supporting the community to meet that best practice as well. And then finally, of course, digital innovation, something that I think every business and individual is grappling with, whether that's an opportunity for AI or digital design or digital wardrobes. And in order for us to move this forward, we will look at it also through an opportunity of research, sharing best practice, and partnering with the right people so that we're giving access and information to our designers whilst also learning from the next generation coming through that are challenging us in how digital innovation can really change the norms of our industry today. So it's exciting times. It is constantly changing. I was talking to Divya before. She was like, I can't believe you've been doing this job since 2009. But it is genuinely different every year because our industry keeps us on our toes. And it's so important that we work together to make sure that we support the whole community to thrive and that we all play our part in this ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Now may I invite the other beautiful Caroline, Ms. Caroline Issa, CEO of Tank, to join the other Caroline. Lots of Carolines. I feel left out for a short Q&A. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Caroline Issa, and I am the CEO and fashion director of Tank magazine in London. So you've got two Brits here sitting in front of you. And we're very lucky to have Caroline, given the Fashion Awards are on Monday night. And as we said, it's about 3,000 people she's welcoming to the Royal Albert Hall. But Caroline, you know, throughout what you've just described to us as the mission of the British Fashion Council, so to amplify the voices, to ensure that there's, you know, innovation baked in at business, and fueling responsible growth, which I think is a great, distinct, kind of very, very specific kind of growth. Collaboration has been kind of, you keep talking about how many stakeholders you have and how many different people and divisions and stakeholders that you have to work with. So I'm curious what advice you have, because you now have many years of collaborating to ensure that you can actually that the British Fashion Council can actually deliver on its mission. And what would you say is key to collaborating efficiently and smartly with all the stakeholders that you have to do?
I think it's key that you have a very clear mission so people know how to engage and how they can support. I'd say that one of the biggest challenges that we have, because we have so many broad stakeholders, that everybody would like us to do more. But every organization knows that they have specific resources, and actually sticking to your mission means that you can be really focused and add value. And so for the majority of stakeholders when they come in is that we tend to talk to them about their strategy and help them actually match their strategy to ours to really think about how we can deliver best practice. So for instance, if it's a retailer, is that it could be mentoring young designers, it could be collaborating with designers, it could be offering better payment terms to designers. You know, there are lots of different levels and different ways in which people can get involved.
And you're having to, as you said, you know, new gen, incredibly young, creative talents who are just figuring out their business models, to some of the biggest high street brands, manufacturing, textile. You know, again, with the BFC and your teams, how do you sort of pivot between talking to the young designer who is trying to figure out how to navigate versus an incredibly well-established high street brand or even manufacturer?
Yeah, so that helps with our programs of change, I think. So from the designer's perspective, we have a specific team who are there to support them, to deliver the funds for the charity, to deliver the mentoring programs, to actually be there at the end of the phone when they call to provide that support and to engage with the industry mentors. I talked about this army of mentors. It really is an incredible group of individuals across the industry who offer their time to support young businesses, including free legal hours and accounting. And, you know, it's not just about thinking about sort of, you know, the marketing opportunities, which many people assume it is. So that's really focused. And that team have a very singular mission, and they are so purpose-driven that nothing is moving them off that mission in order of delivering for those designers. And then we have a commercial and retail team who are there to engage with our commercial partners, our sponsors, and with the retail community to really think about how they activate around events like London Fashion Week, how they support through the Fashion Awards, how they might get involved with mentoring programs. But equally, to think about how they engage in those programs of change around sustainability, circular fashion, ecosystems, etc. We do rely on a lot of support from the industry to really take a lead in championing some of the areas that we either don't have the resource or the expertise to deliver in. And I think sustainability is a really great example of that. My team internally is 4 people for sustainability. We have a big mission, but we have an incredible working group of sustainability experts across all of the major retailers in the UK that are lending their expertise to help us deliver on that mission.
So, you know, I think what I'm hearing is even if you have a tiny team, make sure that your network is wide and an expert. And we are going to be talking later on. We've got a panel about nurturing young talent as well. And I do think that idea of mentorship and so many, I'm sure, in the audience, but also, you know, I know many of the mentors, and I'm looking at some of you here, who volunteer their time and their expertise. So I definitely think that's really interesting. Now, you mentioned, I mean, in the UK, we obviously have a very specific set of challenges, which include Brexit and post-COVID. I think post-COVID is a challenge everywhere, including here in Hong Kong. But the fashion industry is facing huge amounts of challenges. You know, we've had an explosive growth of year. Everybody says next year is going to be challenging. Excuse me. How do you think the BFC is adapting itself to face these challenges head on? And what can everybody here learn from that?
So I think it's a dose of realism and enthusiasm to drive through that. So the dose of realism is really just to think about the trading environment and how that is going to impact our members. I think probably because we work so closely with the retailers as well, we have possibly a better understanding than even some of the designers do around the challenges that are ahead. And that allows us to really think about providing the support network that they might need to really help the designers think differently about their business models, about helping them to really consider risk, which maybe they've not had to do pre-pandemic or since, and the pandemic was quite specific challenges. Everyone was in the same boat. I think as we go into next year for our independent businesses, it's going to be really managing their global wholesale accounts, their distribution, and managing their exposure, I think, in terms of stock levels. But every business is going to be going through that. It's not unique to the UK. I think everybody's looking at international markets. Is sort of the challenges in different parts of the world is having a big impact already on the industry. And I think everyone is bracing themselves for caution for the year ahead. We're doing that with a backdrop of celebrating 40 years of London Fashion Week. So it allows us, it's been, you know, over those 40 years, there have been challenging periods that the industry has come through. So it, again, is that being able to look with hindsight of how particularly independent businesses continue to innovate, to actually pivot, to evolve through these challenging times is, I think, a sense of comfort to businesses to see that the industry has kept going and growing and that businesses have survived through those periods. But it also allows us to really bring a sense of joy. And the fashion industry is fantastic, and it brings that at times when it is most needed. And so we're really looking forward to bringing that sense of joy and fun next year at times when it might feel really challenging.
So hopefully you can all come to London to celebrate London Fashion
Please
Week
do.
40 years, yes. Now, I only have time for one last question, and then I'm actually going to open it up to the audience. There will be a QR code behind me at some point that you can point your cameras to submit your questions that I will, there it is. So my last question to you is, you have seen so much change during the period that you've been with the BFC. And, you know, coming to Hong Kong and seeing all the incredible young talent that we did last night and beyond that. But I am curious also what gives you hope and optimism. And this is a question I'm going to be asking most of my panelists because I love it. Because I'm so curious, what still gives you hope and optimism about this ever-changing fashion industry that we work in?
It is the creativity. And I think it's particularly working with these small independent businesses who are challenging, as I said, the norms of our industry. So whether that's thinking about using upcycled, recycled, dead stock materials, whether it's digitally designing, whether it is thinking about made to order because they don't want to have any waste. But it is sort of thinking about craft in new ways and seeing just when you think they can never be surprised is that these young creatives just sort of blow your mind. And that's what gets me and my team up every morning. It's why we put in the hours. It's why we bring together this ecosystem and network to support growth, because that's what provides the innovation and excitement within our industry. And so that's what gives me hope for the future.
I love that. Goes back to creativity. So I've got a few questions already uploaded. One of them is, how does the BFC facilitate connections between designers and other industry professionals, and how can Hong Kong designers leverage these networks?
Ooh. So we have quite a few networking events where we bring our network together so that people can be in the room, and we set the one mission around that is that don't stand and talk to the people that you know. Speak to at least 2 or 3 people that you don't know, because that's the only way you're going to build your network.
Good advice.
And equally is that we'll do it in environments where it's bringing panels together, talking about specific subjects, enabling people to connect. And we also have a member portal. So unless you're a member of the British Fashion Council, you wouldn't have access to it, where you can access any of the members or our patrons and contact them at any time. So it allows us to get around the wonderful GDPR, because everyone's in a community network and they can speak to each other, and we're not giving away contact details. But it's a very, very valuable for a designer businesses that maybe doesn't want to tell us about the challenge they're going through, and they just want to connect with an industry expert or professional and ask their advice.
Right. Do you believe doing the Louis Vuitton show is strategic to draw more customers from Hong Kong and Greater China, as spending sort of decreases recently, I think is the question. But it's interesting. I think, we're here this week. Vuitton is coming in, obviously, on Thursday. It's interesting to see how Hong Kong is really becoming. Dior have just announced that they're coming here, which is incredible, in May, I think, to show.
I think it's fantastic for Hong Kong. I think, it's a bit like us hosting London Fashion Week. It brings a lot of international attention. We speak quite a lot to the local government in London, who see it as a huge driver for cultural tourism. The impact on spend on businesses from the audiences that here has a very beneficial effect. And so I'm not close to the Louis Vuitton team. I don't know exactly why they decided to show here. But from a Hong Kong perspective, I think it will provide a real bounce to Hong Kong, because just the halo effect and the attention and the media gaze of Hong Kong, particularly at a time like this when the weather's so fantastic, it shines a light on this fantastic destination, whether that's for business or tourism. So I think it's a great thing.
I think last question. What do you think are the key factors that contribute to the success of British designers and brands on the global stage? And how can Hong Kong leverage its unique strengths to achieve similar success?
So I think the strength of British designers and the ones that we work with or that are part of London Fashion Week is just incredible creativity. It's about having a very strong DNA. It's about offering probably a slightly different perspective on the industry. And that builds fantastic global communities. And sometimes that community doesn't have to be significant. It's not one of the global luxury groups, but it is an engaged audience globally that particular business is able to service and is able to build a responsible business off the back of. And for us, that is success as much as it is the top line growth that you might see in terms of increasing sales. So particularly at this moment in time, focusing on responsible growth and profitable businesses that's able to do the right thing is right at the heart of our mission.
That's exciting. I also think, we did a little bit of, separately, some retail. sort of discovery and scouting, and saw so many great British designers at some of the best retailers here. And having seen last night some of these incredible Hong Kong and Asian designers, you can easily see them sitting in global retailers around. And I think, as you said, having like this very thriving creative community. What do you think actually, my last question with our last minute, what do you think also enables a thriving creative community?
I think it is that kind of support. And in the UK, we have brilliant retailers that will offer support in the first door for our designer businesses. And I know that Labelhood are here and a great partner as Machine AR in Shanghai to support these independent designers to have their first foot in the door. And without that, you know, it can be really challenging for a young designer with very little investment or no money behind them to build a business. It's fantastic if you're well funded, you can build a direct-to-consumer business in a very different way. But for the businesses we work with, it's about having strategic partners that can give you a platform and can also help handhold you through those first few collections. Because I said in my talk is that this is not an easy business.
Well, I think a lot of lessons there for all of us that are global lessons. So thank you, Caroline and Rush, and thank you to you for being at our first session. Thank you, everyone.